Good morning. Firstly, I would like to start with a big thank you. I feel privileged, I feel honoured, and I feel humbled to be invited to come and talk, to come and share some of my reflections as a nurse on this area of spirituality and dignity. I think it would be useful to start by giving you a bit of context. Who am I, and what is my journey into nursing and into this area of practice? So I'm hoping you should see the slides. Yeah. So family are important to all of us. They provide us with a history and a context. Our parents, our relatives, our siblings have a significant role in making us the people we are. I'm from a working class background, originating from the mining and coastal town of Whitehaven in Cumbria. So the accent isn't a Geordie accent, it's a Cumbrian accent. It's in the northwest, not the northeast. There have been times in our childhood when we experienced poverty, especially during the miners' strike in 1970. We were not economically or materially privileged, but what we lacked in material possession was more than compensated for by the love we received from our parents. Our parents, or my parents, are Wilfred, Senior, and my dad was a coal miner. My mother, Dorothy, was a seamstress. Like many parents, they both worked hard, ensuring we were all cared for and brought up to respect and value other people. Sadly, both my parents are deceased, but I know their spirit and love lives on, and I'm sure they're very proud of all that their 3 sons, grandchildren, and all their family have achieved and continue to achieve. Some of you may be aware that I'm an identical twin. Rob is a professor in nursing and practice development at Teesside University in the north of England. Together, we have tried in our own ways to make a difference for people receiving nursing and healthcare. Our interests couldn't be much more diverse. Rob is involved with practice development, governance, and evidence-based practice, while I concern myself with the more humanistic and subjective aspects of care and caring. The fact that either of us achieved such positions is nothing short of miraculous. As premature twins, we have spent our entire educational lives trying to catch up with our peers. At school, we were labelled retarded by one of our primary school teachers, and I think the exact phrase was, "Those 2 twins will do nothing with their lives because they're retarded." I'm not one for holding grudges or for being smug, but I think our examples may offer encouragement for all who are considered underachievers. I left school with 1 GCSE, 1 O-level, and Rob, my twin brother, left school with no qualifications. So the prospect of us ever going to university seemed remote. Yet our stories indicate that hard work, determination, and self-belief are transforming. But I must add, for me personally, my personal faith and spirituality have been the ultimate source of my strength and aspiration. So now on to what is important. So I've already said it's a great privilege to be here with you this morning at the 11th Annual Research Symposium at Azusa Pacific University. This is my first time in the United States, and I hope it won't be my last. and to be able to share with you some of my thoughts and reflections on the relationship between dignity and spirituality, and the importance of these concepts for individuals, nursing and healthcare practice. So, is it not a sad indictment that in the United Kingdom we have a world-class health service that is at the leading edge of scientific and technological advancements? Yet, there is a growing evidence base in published reports, all suggesting we seem to have lost sight of some of our primary values of care and caring. I was appointed in August 2008 as Professor in Dignity of Care for Older People. As has already been said, this is a joint appointment between the Faculty of Health at Staffordshire University and the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust. So I'm in a privileged position. I have the opportunity to explore concepts, theories, but at the same time I work with frontline staff. So I understand this is the first appointment of its kind in the United Kingdom and indeed internationally. So while I'm delighted and feel privileged to have been appointed to this role, I do feel a sense of sadness and unease. And why do I think this? First, to appoint professors in dignity of care for any group of person implies something has gone fundamentally wrong in the health or social care system. Secondly, when I undertook my undergraduate training to be a registered nurse, dignity was an integral part of that caring process, something innate, something intuitive, a fundamental principle of care and caring. And I would like to state that any nursing and healthcare practice that is devoid of dignity and spirituality will develop cultures and practices where the person or the patient becomes lost, disconnected in that caring process or disconnected from that caring process, and where staff can feel devalued and disempowered. And I would like to illustrate this by reading an excerpt of text from a public inquiry into the failings at Mid Staffordshire Foundation Hospital NHS Trust about the culture that existed at this time. So in 2013, there was a public inquiry published investigating the alleged deaths of over 400 patients in the Mid Staffordshire Hospital. And it was alleged that due to poor care, lack of compassion and dignity, over 400 patients died. And this is how Lord Francis, who led the investigation, described the culture that existed in this organisation. The previous reports are clear that the following existed: a culture of fear in which staff did not feel able to report concerns, a culture of secrecy in which the trust board shut itself off from what was happening in its hospital and ignored its patients, and a culture of bullying which prevented people from doing their jobs properly. Yet how these conditions developed has not been satisfactorily addressed. Like the USA, health and nursing care is regulated, and there was lots of monitors, inspectors visiting this organisation, and this culture was left undetected. So the public inquiry was an investigation into how could this happen, and more importantly, how could it be prevented? So what was interesting when we look at this public inquiry was 291 recommendations. And the first recommendation is pretty fundamental. The patient must be the first priority in all what the NHS does within available resources. They must receive effective services from caring, compassionate and committed staff working within a common culture. And they must be protected from avoidable harm and any deprivation of their basic rights. So it's pretty clear in some sections of the NHS in the United Kingdom, the patient had become invisible. Patients were overlooked. Their needs were overlooked. So why might this happen? So I would like to start by reading a scenario from an article written by Carol Piles, published in Nurse Educator in 1991. This scenario still has a relevance today and perhaps highlights why nursing and healthcare practice might have lost sight of the most important person, the patient. So while I'm reading through this section, I'd just like you to consider the following question. What is the model of care evident in this scenario? About 12 years ago, a resuscitation was called in a critical care unit while I was the faculty member for students practicing in this area. From outside this room, the students and I observed a scene that will never be forgotten. The resuscitation team rushed in because Sam was in ventricular fibrillation. One member pounded his chest and started sticking needles into him to open the central line. Sam asked, "Am I going to die?" No one acknowledged his existence except to say, "Breathe, Sam." Everyone was busy doing all the things they had been trained to do to restore a heartbeat. Sam asked once again, "Am I going to die?" No response except another harsh, "Breathe, Sam." More people entered the room to observe the resuscitation team in action, but no one spoke to Sam. All Sam finally said was, "I am going to die," and within 15 minutes, Sam was pronounced dead. The resuscitation team left the room convinced they had done everything possible, but the patient died anyway. My reaction was one of horror. There were 20 people in Sam's room, but he died alone. Why didn't someone speak to him, comfort him? Why didn't someone speak to him, comfort him, hold his hand, or even pray to him? The science of nursing had overshadowed the heart of nursing. So it's pretty clear that the type of model in operation in that scenario is the medical model. Pearson, Vaughan, and Fitzgerald describe this model as the following. In this model, people are seen as biological beings made up of cells, which then make tissues, which then make organs, which then make systems. All of these interact and communicate with each other to achieve harmony or a balance, a state called homeostasis. What I want to stress is not everything about the medical model is negative or bad. On the contrary, because of the medical model, we've eradicated the world of many diseases, offering pioneering treatments and alleviating immeasurable suffering. So interestingly, this slide presents the picture of what is called a trauma nursing care mannequin or clinical training model, aptly called the medical model or anatomical model. So when we look at in dictionaries of nursing, the medical model in a nursing context the term signifies that the focus of nursing is the medical diagnosis allocated by the doctor. My concern with adopting a purely medical and reductionist model of care within nursing is that the person, the individual, can become invisible. Just like Sam in the scenario that I've just read. Interestingly, in the scenario, Sam, after Sam's death, is stripped of his identity, his name. He's no longer known as Sam, he's referred to as a patient. And that's a whole other debate around the philosophical implications of end-of-life care and the issue of dignity. I feel that nursing over the past 20 years, more precisely within the UK, but I think it has a relevance internationally, has become more medically focused, reductionist in its approach, and as a consequence, we may have lost sight of our unique selling point. What we, as nurses and a professional body, bring to health, and that is care and caring. So I've reflected upon my nearly 30 plus years as a nurse, and some of the terms, the straplines that have emerged. So over several decades, we've witnessed the introduction of these straplines that preface the goal of nursing. For example, holistic care, individualized care, spiritual care, dignity in care. And interestingly, I was having a conversation with a colleague a couple of months ago, because in the UK we've moved from dignity in care into other forms of care. So a colleague said to me, "Wilf, you'll be out of a job soon." And I said, "Why is that?" And they said, "We no longer use the term dignity in care, but compassionate care." I don't think I'm going to be out of a job, but we'll see. So what is the common denominator identifiable within all these terms? And what it is they seek to combat that prevailing medical and scientific model of care that may have infiltrated and fragmented nursing. These straplines offer a more altruistic and humanistic view of the individual, highlighting the more subjective, sensitive, and arguably contentious elements of nursing, such as spirituality. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. What I want to do is I've painted quite a gloomy picture, especially in the UK, of nursing. And that would be totally unrepresentative. Not everything is bad. On the contrary, there's a vast amount of evidence that demonstrates that healthcare professionals and nursing as a profession do care and are caring, and that the general public do have confidence in the vast majority of nurses. The summary is from the National Inpatient Survey, and I do have the results for last year, and it shows an improvement on these figures. These findings affirm that the vast majority of nurses, and I would add other healthcare professionals, make a valuable and significant contribution to health, and that they are valued by large sections of the general public. Furthermore, these findings don't present a picture of a healthcare system that's often presented in these reports. These present a more balanced and perspective of the situation. However, the survey results do reveal that for a small percentage of patients, they don't have confidence in the nurses and the healthcare professionals who are caring for them. So my aim is, how do we change that? How do we bring about a transition so that all patients feel valued and we get 100% in those ratings? So what I want to do now is to show you a short extract from an award-winning film produced in the UK by a lady called Amanda Waring, and the title is "What Do You See, Nurse?" And this film is based on a poem called "The Crabbit Old Woman" that was written by a lady called Phyllis Cormack. Phyllis Cormack was allegedly a patient in a ward, and after she was discharged, she left this poem in the locker, and the nurses found it. And this short clip is from this poem. And what I must
Four times she called me last night. Last one, gone midnight. On for over there, going over to the same stuff. She went on about 7, 8, 9 o'clock. I mean, it's not as if she hasn't got other friends she can't offload onto. It's like as a feather, this one. I've any trouble getting her out. Anyway, finally, get to sleep at 2. Back up at 7 to come in here, and I'm on a double shift. What about you?
Nah, single.
Right, you're the lucky one.
Yeah. What's she saying?
Nothing. She had a stroke. She likes to make a fuss every now and then. Don't you, dearie? That's quite moody, this one.
What's her name?
Mrs. Atkins. Oh, Atkins. Mrs. Atkins. Like something like that, a chart somewhere.
What do you see, nurses? What do you see? Are you seeing, when you're looking at me, a crabbit old woman, not very wise, uncertain of habit, with faraway eyes, who dribbles her food and makes no reply when you say, in a loud voice,
I do wish you'd try.
I do wish you'd try. Who quite unresisting lets you do as you will, with bathing and feeding, a long day to fill. Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you see? Then open your eyes. You're not looking at me. I'll tell you who I am as I lie here so still. As I move at your bidding, as I eat at your will. I'm a young child of 10. With a father and mother, brothers and sisters who love one another. A young girl of 16, with wings on her feet, dreaming that soon a true lover she'll meet.
I was going to apologise. That's quite a powerful scenario, quite a powerful scene. But I think it highlights so brilliantly the disconnect. The lady isn't treated with any dignity. The two nurses caring for her don't even know her name. And I think it highlights the importance is what happens when caring is absent, when dignity is absent. So the film lasts about 10 minutes, and it goes on to highlight that we have to look beyond the frailty, the immobility, the medical condition to see the person. Every single one of us have a life and a narrative. I've shared with you some of my narrative. We're all co-creating our narratives as we journey. So the story unfolds throughout our own lifetimes. We must remember this in every interaction and dealing with our patients and the public we serve. So in response to some of the issues that had been highlighted in the DVD, in England in 2006, the government, the Department of Health, launched what we call the Dignity in Care campaign. And the aim of this campaign was to restore back at the centre of health and social care this notion of dignity. It was aimed initially at those caring for older people to prevent the shortfall in care highlighted in the scene from the DVD. The lady's dignity in the film seems to have been violated. And as I've already indicated, even those caring for her didn't know her name. So the remit of the Department of Health campaign was to extend it to include all people. And essentially the campaign involved two elements. The introduction of what we call a Dignity Champions scheme and a programme, and what we call the 10-point Dignity Challenge. When I first came into post in 2008, there were just over 8,000 National Dignity Champions. There are over 50,000 signed up on this register. Within my own organisation, I lead the Dignity Champions programme, And when I started, we didn't have any, and now we're up to 400. But I still argue with our senior colleagues and say that's still a small number when we consider 5,000 people work in the NHS trust where I am employed. And every single one of us in that organisation should be a dignity champion. So the rationale was that individuals, organisations, and those providing health and social care would sign up and implement the 10-point dignity challenge that's on the screen. This slide demonstrates that dignity is a broad umbrella term that embraces and addresses fundamental aspects of care and what it is to be a person, and the impact that nursing and nursing practice can have on an individual's sense of self and well-being. It's our responsibility to preserve the dignity of all patients, public we serve. But one point I'm increasingly questioning and challenging in the UK is who's looking after the dignity of those who are providing care. Often working in very challenging and difficult situations. Who's preserving their dignity, the dignity of the nurse, especially in today's economic and financial climate? We're all being asked to do more, but for less. The point I'm making is who's safeguarding our dignity? We have a right to preserve the dignity of our patients, but equally our employers have a duty to uphold our dignity. We need to be valued and our contribution to healthcare recognised and celebrated. So what I would like to do now is to explore the relationship between dignity and spirituality. I'm often asked, why are you writing on the subject of spirituality? You are the professor in dignity of care for older people. This question suggests that these concepts are distinct and unrelated, but that is not the position, as I will now demonstrate. The synergy and symbiotic nature and relationship of spirituality and dignity are evident in those writing on the subject of dignity and care, as outlined by Fenton and Mitchell in this definition. The centrality of spirituality is highlighted within an holistic model, emphasizing the importance of the uniqueness, individuality, issues around empowerment, advocacy, control, and involving people in decisions about their care. So what is holistic? There are numerous representations of holistic care. These often involve a circle that is presented as a pie chart, with the 4 main dimensions displayed. Interestingly, in the United Kingdom, we've just had our professional regulatory body re-implement the new code of nursing practice without a spiritual dimension. So they're presenting a biopsychosocial model of nursing. So as you can imagine, there's several of us who were contesting this and disputing it. This representation on the screen is not truly holistic. It is holistic nursing using a reductionist model. The representation does nothing to highlight how all the different dimensions of our lives are integrated. Our lives aren't compartmentalized or reduced into these discrete areas, as they all interact and are integrated, interdispersed, influencing each other. So when I'm talking to a patient, I don't ask, I'm now meeting your physical needs, I'm now meeting your social needs, I'm now going to meet your spiritual needs. I do it in a continuous, holistic way. So I would rather provide a model where spirituality is at the center of our existence, and it pervades all dimensions equally. And I know not everyone agrees or accepts this model of holistic care that I promote. Furthermore, this model, while not making explicit reference to the concept of dignity, does embrace the notion of dignity, just like the earlier model. So there's lots of research and work being done on dignity. And what I want to share with you now is a model of dignity developed as part of a research study conducted right across Europe called the Dignity of Older Europeans. So the first part of dignity, they use the German word Menschenwürde, which refers to the dignity that we all possess as humans and from which flow the idea of universal human rights. We're all equal with respect to this kind of dignity. The next level of dignity or notion of dignity is dignity of merit. Dignity of merit may be formal or informal. A person who has a particular rank or office may possess certain rights as a result of that office. And this type of dignity is usually conferred upon someone. Although sometimes a person is born with such dignity. And if we think of Prince George in the United Kingdom, he's third in line in terms of succession to the throne. He's already been given a degree of merit in terms of succession. Informal dignities of merit are given when people have earned merit through their deeds and deserve respect for this. So we honour artists, scientists, athletes, other heroes or heroines. And these people might not normally claim any formal right, but in practice they're often treated as if they've got such rights. And what I would talk about as well is places. When I look at the legacy of this public inquiry upon the organisation, the hospital involved, the foundation trust involved, has now been broken up. The hospital has been renamed and services have all been given out to other organisations. Where is the dignity in that? Next dignity is dignity of moral stature. Human dignity is based upon respecting and preserving one's own moral identity. One maintains one's moral stature when one acts or ways in accordance with one's principles. A person who performs cowardly acts or betrayals loses their self-respect and the respect of others. And in the United Kingdom, we've had several institutions where people have lost moral stature. Politicians, before the last general election, were treated with cynicism and disrespect because people felt all they were doing was abusing their expenses system. And there have been other similar examples from other public institutions. The next one is dignity of personal identity. This type of dignity is concerned with the identity of a person. Someone can be robbed of this dignity as a result of external events, but not necessarily through the deeds of another person. The dignity of identity can be violated by physical assault on the person and by humiliation. So the first report published in the United Kingdom, in England, about the failings in the hospital was published by our regulator, which is the Healthcare Commission, now known as the Care Quality Commission. And this is how they describe nursing care in that organisation. The care of patients was unacceptable. For example, patients and relatives told us that when patients rang a call bell because they were in pain or needed to go to the toilet, it was often not answered or not answered in time. So the average response to a call bell in the NHS in the UK, put your hand up if you think it's greater than 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. Less? Greater than 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. Put your hand up. Greater than 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes. However, I know one of the privileges in my role is I just sit and observe nursing care being provided, and I see nurses respond within 30 seconds. They respond almost as fast as the crew and staff on the British Airways flight that I came over to America on. Their buzzers were being answered within 30 seconds. That's sad when I'm timing then. Some relatives claimed that patients were left sometimes for hours in wet or soiled sheets, putting them at increased risk of infection and pressure sores. Now, I would say leaving a patient in a soiled or wet sheet for any length of time is a gross violation of their dignity. That's humiliating. So how do we avoid this? So this slide presents Maslow's hierarchy of need, and it underpins that our nursing models must pay specific attention to all the dimensions of that holistic approach. However, this model affirms that there are aspects of a humanity that are intricately linked to the spiritual dimension, and these, according to Maslow, influence our sense of self and personal identity. And I've also got it on good authority from Tove Giesk, who's been over to Azusa Pacific, that we need to add another layer of needs into this model, and these being our social, digital needs. So how do we connect? How do we stay connected to people in terms of love and belonging? So So what have I tried to do in the organisation where I work? So what we did is we developed what we call the Dignity in Care Indicator tool to capture the patient's experience around some of these broad aspects of care. And this involved asking patients some validated questions incorporated into the survey, into each of these areas associated with their care. The 9 dignity domains were identified, outlined on this slide. And it's clear they reflect some of the key attributes of dignity outlined by Fenton and Mitchell and Nordenfelt and Edgar, who developed the European model. So the point I'm trying to make is that spirituality and an individual's own personal beliefs are addressed within the tool because they are fundamental to some patient's sense of identity and the way of life and how these impact upon their nursing and spiritual needs. Interestingly, there was a report published in 2014 in England looking at end-of-life care in acute hospitals, and only 21% of patients included in that audit was any inquiry made into their religious, personal or spiritual beliefs. Over 80%, 79% weren't even asked. So the question I'm investigating is now why? Given all the evidence, why are staff, why are colleagues, healthcare professionals and nurses reluctant to engage with this area? So one of the things I'm asked is, how do we implement this? How do we assess, plan and evaluate these aspects of care? And this all depends upon how we view and define spirituality. And there are numerous definitions of spirituality within nursing and healthcare literature. One of the things I've been criticised for in my publication and writing is for not providing a definition of spirituality. And that's been deliberate on my part, because I don't think that this concept can be adequately defined by language and words. And neither do I think spiritual aspects of life can be contained or put into or captured in a box. And Aru Narayanasamy, one of the early writers on spirituality, says there's no such thing as an authoritative definition of spirituality. And I agree with him totally. By the way, my definition that I present on this screen is not superior to others that have been published. So my reason for drawing your attention to this definition is that when I did a rehearsal for my inaugural professorial lecture in April 2009, colleagues insisted that I write a definition. So after almost 15 years of nearly getting away with it, I was coerced to put pen to paper. So my definition is based upon personal experience, upon reflection, and an analysis of the empirical work that I've undertaken and the emerging field around spirituality. For me, spirituality is not an intellectual activity. It is central to identity and relevant to all people. Crucially, dignity and spirituality are interdependent. We cannot preserve people's dignity if we do not address areas of religion, spirituality, and personal belief. So in summary, spirituality is about the following. It's about hope and strength, trust, meaning and purpose. However, a close analysis of many of these definitions and attributes on the screen suggests one area of omission is how spirituality may relate to suffering, to pain, to death, and even manifestations of evil. Many of us are caring for people who are suffering and in pain. Healthcare debates on spirituality must start to engage with these concepts of suffering, pain, and how these relate to health, well-being, and the identity of a person. And I say this because when we look at the findings from some of the published reports in the United Kingdom about the alleged neglect and abuse of patients, rather than alleviating suffering and pain, healthcare organisations and professionals have been the catalysts or the instruments of unnecessary suffering. In some instances, these deficiencies in caring have led to the premature death of individuals. Therefore, addressing only the positive, affirming and life-enhancing attributes associated with spirituality do not truly capture the reality of humanity, because they're either expressing the physical or the metaphysical. So in an attempt to offer some explanations for the apparent lack of caring, I'd like to share with you some patient reflections. The phrase treatment versus care is an excerpt of transcript from an interview I held with an older gentleman who was dying from terminal lung cancer. The gentleman's words still resound in my ears. "Wilf," he said, "we get treatment in the hospital and care in the hospice." This phrase still has a significance and relevance today. The fact that this gentleman was able to make a distinction between treatment and care strikes at the heart of some of the issues that are impacting upon nursing and health and social care sectors. The phrase implies treatment is different to care, and care, or let's be more precise, caring, takes precedence or supersedes treatment. So what did the gentleman mean about treatment? Wilf, someone who's technically proficient, good at their job, doing what they should in a time and manner that is appropriate to the needs of the individual. In summary, a practitioner, a nurse, a care worker who displays technical competence and proficiency with regards to the functional, instrumental tasks and duties they perform. Yet, despite technical proficiency, the use of the word treatment can present a picture of someone almost robotic in their actions, someone detached and emotionally disconnected from the process of care. And the short excerpt of the DVD I showed illustrated that clearly. The word treatment feels cold, he said, scientific, and he said I would add artless, in that in its extreme it can lack that human compassion and interaction. What did he say about the word care? Care, he said, conjures up a picture of someone warm, someone who takes time and provides a presence. Care, or more precisely caring, is about being valued and accepted as a unique person with a unique set of needs. And he said these needs will be expressed holistically. So this raises a fundamental question. Can treatment and care be given synonymously when meeting the diverse needs of individuals? So the gentleman elaborated his statement by adding, Wilf, there's a hard and a soft nurse. And I asked him, can you explain this for me? And the response he gave was, the hard nurse approaches me with the opening, what's this pain in your chest? And the gentleman said, instantly I know he or she is not concerned with me as a person, but with the condition that's brought me into hospital, the biological, the scientific. While the soft nurse asks, how are you this morning? How are you feeling? How are your wife and your family? He said, they're concerned with me as a person and my situation, not just the medical condition. So this illustration tells us two fundamental things about the patients and the public we serve. Firstly, they want care or caring, not just treatment. And importantly, they can distinguish the type of practitioner who's likely to provide that care. So I think crucially, the gentleman's phrase tells us that healthcare is a blend of both the treatment and the caring. Or we need nurses and healthcare professionals who are a blend of the hard and the soft nurse. So to further explain the hard and the soft nurse, I'd like you to draw you to the attention to the work of a good friend and colleague of mine, Professor Roger Watson. And he argues when referring to nursing care that it's crucial to distinguish between the instrumental, that is what is done in the process of caring for someone, and the effective, the demeanour or attitude of the person, the nurse, when that care is being delivered. So in summary, what we're all aspiring to be is nurse A. We want to be a blend. We want to be good and effective, but equally we need to be competent in our caring. So I would just like to offer the following model to demonstrate the importance of integrating dignity and spirituality. Recent reports in the UK, and I think the implications of these reports will extend globally, suggests that some nurses and healthcare organisations are failing to recognise the uniqueness of the individual. This may be as a result of systemic failure, and the reasons for which are numerous and complex. The net result is the general public, especially within England, feel that these failings have had a significant and detrimental effect on the organisation's ability to provide safe and high-quality standards of care. My reflections suggest that spirituality is an integral part of the individual. Spirituality and dignity are not competing forces, since both shape the identity of the person, influencing our attitudes, our beliefs, and ultimately our actions and behaviours, and the approach to nursing care. Therefore, every single one of us must give careful consideration to our own personal identity, since this shapes the identity and ultimately the values of those receiving and delivering care. Organisational philosophy, values and cultures have a profound effect on the attitudes and behaviours of staff and their perceptions of quality. At the moment, the experience of some patients and their relatives falls into the categories of neglect and abuse, in that they fail to acknowledge the care or the needs of the person. By refocusing attention on spirituality in conjunction with dignity, this will enable nurses and healthcare to reinstate a person-centred approach to delivering high-quality care, combating some of the target, outcome, consumerist and bureaucratic agendas that have pervaded nursing. So just to conclude, I would like to conclude by affirming that not everything in nursing or health in the UK is bad. On the contrary, in my humble opinion, some of the major failings highlighted in nursing, more particular, can be quickly resolved by placing the individual back at the heart of everything that we strive to do. Nursing may have lost sight of the importance of people and the value of human dignity. There seems to have been replaced with a cold, uncaring attitude that does not heal but brings suffering and pain, and as I've already said, sadly for some people, premature death. Therefore, nursing and healthcare, especially within the United Kingdom, must undertake a whole system review. We must continue to in our drive to re-establish and safeguard our core values of principles of caring. Spirituality and dignity are a constant reminder to focus our attention on the people who are in receipt and provide care, not on the targets and waiting times or financial constraints that can detract us from our primary goal. There needs to be a greater recognition and value within society of the important contribution that nursing and caring roles provide, and this should be duly acknowledged. But above all, there must be an open, honest and transparent culture where people can challenge and raise questions without fear of intimidation or retribution. Thank you for listening.
There we go. Can everybody hear me okay? Very good. Dr. McSherry, that was an excellent talk, and we've had some questions come across from our Twitter feed, and I want to please remind everybody the hashtag that we're using, if you do have questions, is on the placards on the table. Generally, the questions kind of came around in a few different realms, and I'll kind of collapse them a little bit here. And the first one would be, what differences do you see in dimensions of spirituality between the United States, the United Kingdom, and maybe other areas? And kind of a similar question is, do you see an inherent value, or is there's, when we talk about in the United States now we have the Affordable Care Act, and of course you have the National Health System in the UK. Do you see that that is something that impacts this dimension of spirituality and dignity?
I think there are clear distinctions between the role of the way that spirituality is viewed and considered in the US and in the UK. If I had to talk openly about my personal belief and faith within a UK context, within my own university, that there'd be a chance I would be probably disciplined or challenged. Is it appropriate? So there is quite a reluctance to engage openly in a dialogue or debate about where does spirituality fit. I think in the UK as well, there is an acknowledgement that spirituality is fundamental to nursing, like the USA. But I think it's our professional regulatory bodies don't seem to embrace it. So I said earlier about our Nursing and Midwifery Council published the new code in January. There'd been quite a concerted effort to have the word spiritual put into that code over many years. And when I reviewed it, the word was absent again. So I'm in a dialogue at the minute. Myself and other colleagues have written to the NMC asking them to explain why is the word spiritual not visible within the code. All it presents is a biopsychosocial model, and I don't think that truly reflects the nature of humanity. So I think there are similarities, and I think in the UK it's far more secular in some areas. So there is an opposition towards anything spiritual.
Thank you. Another question came up and resonated with a few people with the description of the medical model versus the nursing model and the model that you presented. Are there any other nursing models that particularly resonate with your particular model? Or if we're moving away from a medical model and really looking at a pure nursing model, what models would you advocate or would you think would be the most value?
I think there are plenty of models, nursing models that advocate. So if we look at Pamela Reed's theory of transcendence, that's one prime example where spirituality is central. And there are other models, Swanson's model of caring. So these are all, I'd say spirituality in some nursing models isn't explicit as it is in others, but I think there's the clear articulation that spirituality is certainly important for nursing and within nursing. Looking at models that have been developed in the UK, there are only really two models that have originated out of the UK, and I don't think spirituality is necessarily explicit in both of those. So my ambition is to try and develop a model of nursing that reflects these concepts explicitly. That's a mission I'm on. That's one of the pieces of work I'm involved in at the minute.
Very good. A question just came in a couple of minutes ago. How do you encourage caring for dignity and respect patient spirituality to those hard nurses? And in other words, I think that how do we work with those nurses? What is the best way to do that?
Probably with sensitivity and compassion. That's how we do it. But I mean, we've got to look at why do some people feel reluctant and feel this isn't an area that they can engage with. And some of it might be about their own personal awareness of the importance of spirituality or lack of spirituality. But I don't think it's about judgment. I think it's about compassion and sensitivity.
Hello, my name is Joseph. I'm assisting Dr. Schroeder. I have a question. A recent ANA study investigated the correlation between patient outcomes and the prioritization of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the nursing staff. With a patient-centered answer, how important is maintaining staff needs to maintaining patient dignity and satisfaction in an overly stressed acute care environment?
I think it's fundamental. I don't think for me we can... One of the things I'm constant challenging the executive board where I work is our you, preserving the dignity of the staff who we are asking to provide care. Because if that isn't upheld, then I think it becomes increasingly difficult to ensure the dignity of patients is actually supported. And I always think, when I reflect on the situation in the NHS in England at the minute, there are some significant challenges around finance and economics and staffing. And I find that colleagues I work with want to give more, but there is a limit in terms of how much we can take from those individuals, and I think some of them are at that limit. because they don't feel valued. They don't feel their contribution as a profession is necessarily acknowledged and celebrated. I think one of the humbling things in 2014, I was asked to attend the hospital's annual presentation awards event, and I felt so moved to see colleagues and staff, not just from nursing, right across the trust, their contribution being acknowledged, and the joy, the satisfaction. It was a real privilege, and we need to do more of it.
Thank you so much, Dr. McSherry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that whoever it was that labeled you as retarded, I'm very glad that they were wrong and that you have gone on to do everything that you have so you could share this powerful message with us today. Please join me.